Great things are certainly happening today, but to help provide a sneak peek into the future of community design, I welcome my next two guests. Larry Gellerstedt is the former CEO of Beers Construction Company, and today he heads a division of Cousins Properties. In addition, he serves as the first chairman of the region's new Livable Communities Coalition. Also with me is Egbert Perry, chairman and CEO of the Integral Group. Mr. Perry is well recognized for his exceptional leadership in structuring public-private partnerships that have transformed communities and served as models for responsible urban development. Thank you both for joining me here on The Shape of Things to Come. I appreciate your time.
Happy to be here.
I'm going to start with you. As head of this new Livable Communities Coalition, please define for me livable community.
Well, what the livable communities, first of all, is defined by the communities themselves, and so it doesn't have just one definition. But generally what it's about is trying to get to where we don't have pods of development, where all the office buildings are in one area and all the housing is in a separate, distant area, and all the retail and shopping are in yet again another area.
Gas prices. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's trying to take, for instance, where the job centers are and make sure that there's housing choices around and that the densities are there that can support and provide options for the people that work in these developments, and that the retail is there so that people can live and work and play in an environment that doesn't always require them to get in the car and have long commutes. It's not just an urban issue, it's a suburban issue, it's an ex-urban issue where you put these elements in closer proximity and integrate them together.
What are some of the challenges that we face in these livable communities, establishing them at this point in time?
Probably the biggest challenge is that we've not lived that way in the past in this part of the country. So there are a lot of old attitudes and habits that we really need to overcome.
That people cling to?
Absolutely. And people are, as much as we complain about sprawl, people know what to do when they want to go shopping. They know to jump in their car and drive. It's a totally different lifestyle when you're talking about concentrating all of these uses. But I would say perhaps maybe the biggest practical issue as a developer is dealing with the fact that we do not have zoning and other kinds of rules and laws and regulations that govern creating these kinds of communities. So
and do you find you're spending part of your time trying to develop and educate?
Absolutely.
And that's a big part of where the Livable Communities Coalition, one of our core principles is to educate. And as I have gone around and talked in that capacity to communities, you have certain words and certain concepts that when viewed in a historic perspective may create an image that makes a community concerned, and you're beginning to get examples in Atlanta where you can point and say, no, this is what we're talking about when we talk about high density.
In fact, if you think about it, we used to laugh and say the average citizen is opposed to sprawl. Nobody likes sprawl, but they're also opposed to density.
So what do you do?
Exactly. And I think, as Larry said, if you think about it, the issue was having an example to point to. So when you say, I want to do an urban, or not necessarily urban, but mixed-use development that has good density, a lot of housing choice, is walkable, livable, etc., what does that mean? And there are too many words that people have no way of relating to, at least in this part of the country. Now, in the Northeast, they've been living like that for a long time. So what we're calling new and exciting in this new movement is really not that new when you think about it in a more national context.
Egbert, you have been extremely successful in revitalizing Auburn Avenue, and I think people are interested to know what comes next. What type of housing components will we be seeing down the road?
Well, Auburn on the eastern end had historically had single-family homes. On the western end, it's been all commercial. So what we were doing on the western end with our Renaissance Walk project was creating a sizable change in the way in which people live. So we have a lot of condos, about 159 condos over retail. That we expect to create a sense of ownership and investment on the corridor. And I think as you look with Georgia State dormitories and some other apartments that are already being framed, you're going to find a lot of different housing choice along the corridor.
What impact do livable communities have on people's lives?
Well, I think the long-term impact is that the quality of life that we have enjoyed in Atlanta gets preserved, but gets preserved in a different way. And that means that, you know, people can live, work, play, walk, get in their car if that's their choice. But it gives a series of choices, and it gives, I think that's the key thing. And I think
people like choice.
And people like choice. As has been demonstrated by the big upturn in the developments where the mixed use have happened, have not suffered from people that have wanted to come in and buy the units or rent the units, whichever the case may be. So it's truly been a market where, as people have built it, the demand has always risen to the supply level thus far. Now, that won't always happen, but it will have a huge impact, not just on this generation, but particularly on the next generation in terms of how this region feels to live in.
Last question. What are we not doing today that you would anticipate we'd be doing maybe 20 years from now when we have 2 million more people?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. From an economic standpoint, we've really got to get much more forward thinking about transportation and how the limited funds that we have for transportation get spent.
It's creating an inextricable link between land use and transportation in a way that it would then be just an automatic that everyone thinks about that as, you know,
all right.
Can't
so
disconnect
continued
them.
livable communities, but clearly a better connected transportation system.
Yes.
That's right. And I think you'll see that as it is already, as people can see examples of this, momentum will take over and people will start to more and more want to adopt in appropriate places the livable communities guidelines.
All right. With that, I have to say thank you to both of you. I appreciate your time, Larry Gellerstedt and Egbert. I appreciate it very much.
Our
Thank
pleasure.
you.